Hi, Viola. Thank you for coming
Hello.
on. It's a pleasure having you on board among the other ATIH teachers. Thanks again for collaborating and joining this project. And before we start, I want to ask you a basic questions. And so why don't you tell us your name?
I'm Viola Rose.
Okay. And Viola, you're currently living where?
I'm in Portland, Oregon, in the United States.
All right, cool. And where are you originally from?
Originally from Massachusetts. I've been in Oregon for about 25 years.
Boston, Massachusetts?
Yeah, nearby.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Are you an MIT girl?
No.
Okay. Want to tell us about your formal education?
My formal education. Well, I spent my formal education years at rainbow gatherings and traveling the country and going to India and living in ashrams and getting a different kind of education, which really set my life on the path that I'm on now. And yet I have some formal training. I went to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition and became a certified holistic health coach. And I'm a certified Gong practitioner and a certified laughter yoga leader, and have studied with shamans and Reiki and all that kind of realm. So very untraditional education, which I think serves me well on the path that I'm on.
Awesome. And so I think that answers our next question, which is career background. You shared it. All right, cool. So this is a formal introduction. And oh, sorry, one last question. Teaching ATIH, how many years?
I trained with Drumbelow in January of 2012 and started teaching in the spring of 2012. And since then I've taught almost 80 workshops. So
wow,
it's been kind of a full-time thing for me.
So we're almost talking about one a month. Yeah, it's been 8 years, a little less than one a month.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah. It's been, I dove in with all of my heart and soul. I was like, this is the most important information I'd ever come across. And I just really wanted to share it widely. So I've traveled a lot and taught a lot of workshops. I was also here in Portland as well.
Nice. You're doing well with KPIs, I would say.
With what?
KPIs in corporate world is the, your standards achievements.
Oh, nice.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you met Drumbelow and what led you to, meet him, or how did it all come together?
Great. Well, I lived in Ashland, Oregon for many years back in the 90s. And I remember there was like VHS copies of the Flower of Life workshop, and they would be copy made after copy after copy, like really bad quality. And people would get together and watch them and geek out on sacred geometry and Drumbelow's fascinating information. And I wasn't that interested in it, and just kind of knew it was there in the periphery. And it wasn't until 2011, when Fukushima happened, that I had a bit of a wake-up call. And I became nervous about earthquakes and apocalypse, and became a bit of a prepper for a couple of months, kind of got a little spooked, I guess. And then one day it hit me that the only thing that I needed to do to prepare for whatever was coming in this world was to actually get into my heart. And I had already been living in ashrams for years and having spiritual practices. So I was familiar with the idea of living in my heart, but I knew something more was needed from me to really get on track with my purpose here in this life. And so I mentioned it to a friend, and she said, oh, you should read Drumbelow's book, Living in the Heart. And I was like, Drumbelow, you mean that guy with the sacred geometry and that super nerdy stuff? And she said, trust me, this is different. This is not that. And I actually got that book from the Portland Library in spring of 2011, the Living in the Heart book. And as soon as I started to read it, I didn't put it down. I was in my backyard in a sleeping bag with a flashlight till I finished the book, like outside in the spring nighttime air. And then, of course, I read everything that he had and watched every video I could find. And because I just knew that there was truth here and that there was resonance for me. And then went online one day, a couple months later, to see if he was still teaching. And lo and behold, he had just announced a workshop in Sedona in 2011 in November. The first time he was publicly going to offer the Awakening the Illuminated Heart to the public. And so I went there and did the whole workshop with him and walked away saying, this is the most important thing I have ever done. And at that workshop, he made an announcement that he was going to select 100 people to train to be his facilitators. So I got the full yes and went and trained with him in 2012.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the experience of going through the training?
Yeah, I was practicing the meditation and the Living in the Heart book before going, and doing what I could from the Flower of Life books. But the experience in the workshop is totally different, entirely different way of activating the Merkaba, and it was just so profound. I just knew that I was getting the tools that I needed for myself. I'm a person who's really into sovereignty and freedom and independence, and trying to have everything that I need within myself. Like, I have a deep interest in breatharianism as well, like not needing anything outside of myself. And so the tools that I got from that workshop fit so perfectly in my toolbox, because they were all tools that enabled me to not need to seek things outside of myself anymore. Connecting with my own higher self, activating my own light body, touching into the tiny space of the heart, which is like the quantum field that connects to everything. These were like amazing tools, because then after that, I could tune in directly within for answers, for guidance, for energy, for information, for life force.
Amazing stuff. I have had a very similar experience to yours. I have, since I was 17, 1999, been practicing the yoga tradition, been to ashrams, spent a couple of years. No, the longest I spent was 8 months in India, but went down 4 or 5 times and traveled around and had insanely profound experiences through the yoga tradition. And in every little book that I read, from the Upanishads to the Rig Veda to the Samkhya Karikas to the Yoga Sutras, the Shiva Sutras, everywhere there's a little line about the heart. In the Guru Gita, it's actually the clearest specification of the tiny space of the heart. And it's like in the lotus, I can read it, but anyway. And never I could really have a to-do list. I knew it was so important because it was everywhere and everyone the highest sages always spoke about it so highly. I never knew what to do with it or how to get there. So I always thought it was like this highest state of samadhi, very difficult to achieve, or like this. How do you know when you're in the heart? That was my first question. It's like, how the heck? And then when Drunvala's books came around, I'm a guy, so I have 2 masters and I studied a lot, love to study. And so as soon as the geometry came around, my eyes went like ding, the everything inside went go for it, dude. And so I geeked out as well on the geometry. And then the Illuminated Heart book and the training came around. I never had a chance to really come to Sedona, even though I was in the States during that time. And everything came together. It was a protocol. You can do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're in the heart, and then you connect your pineal, and then all the rest kind of spontaneous happen. When before I was also doing it with the geometry. And the fascinating stuff is that the geometry was also connecting to the yoga, which is the tantric side of the mandalas and the yantras. And, like everything was coming together. And I knew it was the cherry on top of the cake of all those years of yoga I practiced and studied. So thank you for sharing this. It's exciting to find someone else that had a similar experience.
Yeah. Everything gave pieces along the way. Every path and rabbit hole I went down, a journey, just diving in. It's all been all little pieces of the puzzle for sure. And then finding Drunvala's work, it all just sort of came together.
Yeah, he literally compiled eons of time in very, very dense, not dense, but like well compiled and structured courses and books. And it's fascinating what he's done. I'm really grateful for having found his books. Okay, my next question, Viola, is can you tell us about your personal experience, first of all, of the Merkaba, and then of the illumined heart, of the tiny space of the heart?
Okay, so my experience of the Merkaba, uh, I feel it most when I'm in nature. Like when I'm out in nature and there's the prana from the forest, I can feel the spinning around me, and I can feel the disc, and so I have a little felt sense of a relationship also with the Merkaba as part of my field, as part of my being. And the way that the Merkaba informs my life is that I feel like a galactic superhero. I just do all the time. I feel like nothing can touch me. Nothing can penetrate this energetic field unless my higher self or I want it to. And I feel I can walk into any realm, any scene. I'm not afraid of like negative energies, dark entities, like things of that nature. I just feel like an invincible superhero, and I feel like I can charge up my Merkaba and program it to bless, to emit love to the world, and just walk out in large groups of people and just like whoosh whoosh, walk around and just like blessing the people and the energetic field that stretches out 55 to 60 feet around me. So that's one way that I have the experience of my Merkaba, is that it just feel that sense of real sovereignty with it. I have my own energy field that will carry me wherever I need to go, and whatever happens, whether it's the end of life and just transitioning beyond this wheel of karmic realm, or it's also if ascension were to happen, whether that is something that's going to play out in our lifetime or not, I don't know, but I feel ready for whatever's coming.
Nice, incredible. And so, how did you transition from the experience of creating your Merkaba with your mind into naturally manifesting it through your heart?
I didn't really have too much of an experience with the mind Merkaba, because I had found Drumbalo, in the spring of 2011. And by the fall, I was at his workshop learning it from the heart. And so I had practiced it through the mind version for maybe a couple months. And without doing it with a teacher and just practicing it through the book, I never really felt like that solid click in that I was really rocking a synthetic Merkaba. So it wasn't until I activated it from the heart that it felt real to me.
Mm-hmm. So can we say that you experience it more as a field rather than geometry?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not too in touch with the geometric nature of it. I feel the Leonardo sphere, I feel the disc, and I feel the spinning of the star tetrahedrons, but I don't feel the tetrahedrons themselves. I'm more personally in tune with the spinning.
Wow, that's fascinating. And are there pragmatical ways that you use the Merkaba or the tiny space of the heart in your daily life? Things, like, let me just be nitty gritty right now and ask you how you implement these teachings and this meditation into the three most mundane things, wealth, health, and relationships. How do you, this is what people want in life, to have, to be happy. Supposedly the formula is based on these three pillars, wealth, health, and relationships.
Okay, I think I'll take that question and then transition into talking about my experience in the heart, which was your next question for me, because I feel like I have an answer to that from here. And so my experience of living with the work and the information and the teaching of the tiny space of the heart is that doing the training, right, and learning this method and this meditation of getting into the tiny space of the heart, for me has been like when you have a dense, thick forest and you want to get from one point to the other point and you start walking, it takes a while to walk that pathway. And then the more often you walk that path, the more the pathway becomes smooth and clear and faster and easier to walk. And so that's been my experience of getting into the tiny space of the heart. It can be quick, super easy. It's a drop in at this point. And I notice when I'm not in my heart, more than like, oh, I'm so in my heart right now. That's the novelty. For me, the novelty is when I'm not, and I'm like, oh God, I'm so not in my heart right now. I'm out in traffic or in line at a store or something.
Road rage.
And so for me, it's a dropping in. And so the practice has become returning. It's just returning to the heart, returning to the tiny space. And it's like almost a breath and a felt sense of embodying here and just like bodying here. And I can just drop right into the tiny space. So that's how it's informed my life. And if I do the meditation regularly, then it's reminding me of that place. And then when I go about my day, I can continually breathe from this place, engage with people from the tiny space of the heart. So it's not like something I'm only doing in meditation at this point. You know, that's training so that you're living in the heart, right? The name of the book is Living in the Heart, not Meditating in the Heart. So that's the objective, right? Is to live here. And so returning and living, engaging with people, and I can feel it. I can feel the warmth in my heart when I'm there. And and then your question of how does that inform like the mundane things of life, money, relationships, health. And you know, there's the meditation in the workshop where you learn to create from your heart. Go into your tiny space of your heart and create whatever you want and bring it out into reality, and it will happen. Well, I had this experience of every time I do that, or I've tried to, and I go into the tiny, I open up my third eye, do the whole meditation, go into the tiny space of my heart. When I get there, all is complete, perfect, and whole, exactly as it is. And then I don't want to create anything. And so when I'm in my heart, I don't feel like I need to push the river of life as much. I don't feel like I need to create things that I want. I become more trusting. And so I haven't actually used the Merkaba in the heart to create relationships or money. I will definitely use the prana breathing exercise to generate healthy field so that I am living healthy. And I'm really interested in that, but I haven't really used the Merkaba for that.
That's fascinating. I appreciate how well articulated you are and concise at the same time.
Thanks.
So,
one thing I want to add to that about this experience of living in the heart and how it's become such a prominent part of my reality. I think part of that is the blessing of having been a facilitator of this work, because I'm a Sagittarius. I get caught up in this path or that path and become obsessed with this thing, and I can be all over the place, exploring, growing, researching, reading, learning. And most of us, I think, have a version of that. We go to a workshop, we learn something, and then that's really cool. We do it for a couple months, and then we move on to the next fun, exciting new growth edge, right? And one of the blessings for me has been 10 years now of teaching this work, or 9 years. And I've taught this workshop so many times that it keeps bringing me back to it, right? It's constantly part of my reality. I'm running this energy in this field. And so I'm always going back to the tiny space of my heart. I'm always activating my beams. I'm always breathing the prana into my field. And because of that, it's gone so much deeper than if I had just been an attendee and gone to do it. So that's been an amazing blessing of being able to get to this point where I feel like my home is anchored in my tiny space. Because I get to teach it over and over and be with people in that field. It's such a blessing.
That is pretty amazing. It is really amazing. That crystallizes it in your system, isn't it?
Yeah. Like at this point, my beams of light that, we activate in the workshop, the psychic antennas coming out of your pineal chakra, they literally feel like limbs, like arms, like they're that present, a part of my physical being, that I feel these energy beams, like just like I would feel my arm.
That's really amazing. Let me go through a little bit of these questions. So you never had any financial issues, I bet.
Any financial issues?
Yeah. No, any challenges from, like you never wanted more money?
No, I've never been driven by much money, and I've never really had a lot of it. And I'm a hacker, so I've always made do. And I'm frugal and a hacker. And I live in a single wide mobile home, and I live really frugally, and I've always done that. So I haven't had a big drive for a lot of money. I just need enough to be on my path and get by. And so it's never been a huge drive or a huge struggle. It's always been there for me when I've needed it or put energy into it.
That's really fascinating what you're saying. A lot of people drive their life to misery in the name of money, and they sometimes don't even realize they are only making someone else rich, and and spend their time doing that. But that's another subject. So did you actually experience the explosion of light when the Merkaba activated and your light body manifested?
I felt a wave of energy, and having brought over 1,000 people through this workshop, it's so interesting to hear all the different people's experiences of what they are actually experiencing when their Merkaba activates. I love hearing about that. It's so different for everyone. And for me, it was a wave of energy that went out from at my 3/4 of an inch above my perineum, where my 8 original cells are, just like Drunvalo talks about. I felt a wave, which was like the disc, just like whoosh, going outward. And it was an undeniable feeling that my Merkaba had activated at that moment.
Brilliant. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you experienced in the teaching and in the workshops the difference between male and female energy and how they approach the experience? Because that's something have not asked other teachers, but I think there's value in recognizing that, not to create discrimination, but to clear the polarity somehow.
Interesting. I have noticed that more masculine-minded or logical-minded people in the workshop, ask more questions and want the logistics and the details, and they want to understand the steps and what's actually happening, right? And more feminine-minded people or more intuitive-minded people will just do it. They'll just kind of intuit it and go through the steps. And so it, and yet it's not like that one way is easier than the other or one way is right. I've had just as many male-bodied people, as female-bodied people activate the Merkaba in the workshops. So, and I think that partly is because Drunvalo is so aware of that difference, that there's 2 different ways to approach it. And so he really covers both ways in the workshop and gives people an intuitive way or a logical minded way.
I think
So
it's fundamental. I think it's really, really fundamental because, logical minds have a tendency to be way more sensory or visual, if you want.
Yeah.
I know they'll talk about our experience. I've seen this, I've seen that. I'm so clear about the rods, and I've seen. And then everyone else that it's like, or usually ladies are very quiet and they're like, I just felt really amazing, or I saw the light, and they feel like diminished by the other person's big talks. And I think I had a little bit of an effect like that on some of the ladies during the workshop. But at the moment I wasn't really aware, and I think it's important for people to be aware that there's 2 approaches. It's not that one is better than the other. Actually, the female approach is probably much easier because there's no energy expenditure into trying to articulate, visualize, all of that. It just happens.
Right.
Next question. Sorry. Sounds like I'm talking more to myself than to you.
I know, we're having a conversation. It's great.
Yeah. So, oh yeah. So, how did your ESP and extrasensory perceptions, and with this I want to include, clairvoyance, clairaudience, precognition, intuition, has improved since your first workshop, and how through the, like, I'm sure you'll be able to articulate how it changed and how it has improved, but if you can drop direct experiences in there, it'll be very appreciated.
I don't think I have specific experiences to share, but one thing that is definite is that my psychic abilities have grown to such a degree that I just trust them. I'm at the point now, the psychic antennas and my beams are so activated that I just trust whatever I'm getting without second guessing it at all. Like, it's just been shown to me over these years so much that that my intuition is on, that my psychic abilities are on, that I can read people, that I can read energies, and I just don't doubt it anymore at all. And so I just am naturally sort of just responding from my psychic center, of course, combined with the heart as well, as much as possible. So I don't know that I have specific experiences. I certainly was already tuned into a certain degree beforehand, but it's certainly amped up.
That's interesting. For me, 30 years, independently of, definitely my path was fundamental in understanding and practicing, but through the years and through work and even in corporate work, um, I have to say it's been a spike, and it was a necessary one, because I've had the naive habit, let's call it that way, of trusting everyone like a little puppy, But when you are in business, you got to be careful. You have to understand where people are coming from, what's their true intention, where's the lie, where's the edge, where are they pushing you, which way you're going. Um, and like I can smell it miles away nowadays, and sometimes it's just a matter of listening. You just listen to yourself and trust what you're hearing. That was the biggest challenge for me, trusting to myself. First of all, is listening. Sometimes you don't need to do much. You hear it. It's like in the air that they're it's a half truth, or they're going in the wrong direction. But then do you give them a benefit of doubt? Do you trust that they mean well? That's how I grew up. That's how I trusted, like I believed. But then, you know, we live in a polarity world, so you got to trust, learn to trust, but also pay attention to who's coming in front of you. And somehow that's, I believe, how I kind of develop a little bit of a more stronger intuition. It's actually fascinating that for you is second nature. It's probably all the years of teaching,
Yeah, maybe so. And then, I was saying earlier how I feel like an invincible superhero, right, with my Merkaba activated. And I think that maybe that's part of why as well, is that my intuition feels so completely dialed in, like my connection with my higher self, like it's just there as an active voice inside. And, not second guessing yourself, I think is probably a crucial ingredient to feeling like an invincible superhero. There's no doubt. And so that's part of that scenario.
The tiny space of the heart. Can you share something about it? And I know that you experience it on a daily basis, but like, is there any outstanding experience that you would like to share about teaching it, or how it affected your specific event or a specific situation? One of the teachers told me that he used it the moment his daughter was about to be born, because the child was having trouble coming out, and as soon as he did that, the child started coming out, and it was almost born in a fascinating way. And you'll see in the if you have a look later on when this project completed, it's a beautiful experience. So that's what I'm digging for. These are the nuggets, golden nuggets that I'm looking for from you guys.
So the tiny space of my heart, I don't know if I have a big story to share about something like that. I just, I drop in. I think the first time that I remember dropping in the workshop with Drumbolo, even though I had experimented around with it with the books before going, but I remember going into the tiny space for the first time and how profound that was for me. And it's called the tiny space. You go in, right, very small space, and then how it was like going through the eye of a needle for me. And I went through the very small space, but then it really opened up into the cosmos.
Wow.
And it's like the stars and everything. It's huge. It's, literally the eye of the needle into the quantum everything. And one interesting story that I have is that I went to a breatharian retreat in 2015, where we're going to learn to live on prana. And in that, there was a 3-day of dry fasting. And we would be doing breathwork exercises to learn to pull the energy from the heart. And on the first day of the retreat, like, I got it. Like I had this experience where I could just pull everything directly through the tiny space of my heart and was connected to all things. And I remember saying that to the teachers, and they were like, okay, you can go home now. You get it. And I was like, why did I get it so fast? And I realized it's because at that point I had already been teaching Drumbolo's work for 3.5 years, and was working with the tiny space of the heart so regularly that it just lined up so perfectly with that. And then on day 3 of the dry fast, where I hadn't had any food or water for 3 days, I remember being outside and looking out at the stars, and it was very similar to the feeling I had in my tiny space of my heart. And I had an experience where looking out at the stars, I knew I am that, looking at the stars. And it wasn't just an intellectual thing like it had been in the past, where like, oh, I am that, we are everything, blah, 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 quantum reality, holographic nature of reality, but like to feel it and to have that experience of looking at the stars and feeling that I am that. And that's probably the most profound moment I can think of that's related directly to doing the work in the tiny space of the heart.
That's impressive. That's really amazing. I mean, in the yoga tradition, I know that is, the culmination experience. I am the universe is me. It's that aham brahmasmi experience that happens once in a lifetime if you've done the real work. Hat to you. Okay, so next question. Let me dig a little bit, because you've gone through the juice real quick. Here's another good one. So, Earth evolution and ascension mysteries, ascension process. There's so much stuff out there in the communities now, whether it's ufology, spirituality, yoga, everyone's talking about it. I mean, like this thing about the world changing, the end of the world, the end of time's been going on since 2000. Since 2000, it's been 20 years that we're about to blow the heck up, and it's all about to finish, and it's 20, no more 20. So what is your take? What do you think is actually happening? And tell us your perception of ascension and beyond.
Yeah, what a can of worms, huh? There's so much out there, and I think I'm at peace with actually not knowing, because how can we? There's so much different information, and yet I know that something's here, something's going on. I don't think I would have come here and lived this life if there wasn't a big reason to do it and a big time to do it. And as Drumbolo says, a lot of us are volunteers. I definitely identify as a volunteer here to sort of play a role in this big grand thing that's going on. And so, even in the last year or so, as things have started to get even weirder, I've gotten a little more excited, thinking, okay, it's game on, it's happening, whatever it is, this dance of duality, right? Where the Drumbolo talks about this, where the duality gets stronger before the unity, and the divides and all the craziness always gets stronger before it finds its sweet spot in unity. And so I think we're in that, and I think it keeps changing. There is no direct line, and things have been predicted where it was going to flip years ago, or now, or in a few years, or and we're just in it. Huh? The poles, the dimensions, the third to the fourth dimension, who knows what, but that whatever is this tension that is building in whatever way that chooses to play itself out, whether that means a dimensional shift or a pole shift, or we destroy ourselves and then start over again in a higher vibration. I mean, who knows, but we're in it. And one thing that has given me peace through this challenging time on the planet is that I remember Drumbolo saying in the Flower of Life books that the third dimension is a discordant realm. It's like if there's notes, the third dimension is a discordant note. And we're just meant to be here for a short period of time before we move on. And so I just remember that, like, this is meant to be a discordant realm. We are living in duality, and just the nature of the third dimension of the earth. I mean, everything eats everything else here. That it's just, it's a dualistic world. The beautiful forest, which I spend so much time in, if I go under with a microscope and I look beneath the surface, everything, it's like a horror movie down there, right? Everything's eating each other, and insects and all that stuff. And so I just come back to peace, going, this is exactly what's meant to play out here. People are here to play out their experiences of duality and grow beyond it. And so I think that's what's happening here is a school where people can grow through duality. And maybe some people are here to be an anchor of a vibration that is maybe not part of the dualistic realm, so that it gives anchor points for the vibration to continue to upgrade everybody, and as well as the solar flares and the dance of transition between the sun and the moon. There's a lot going on, and I don't know if that means in my lifetime that we'll see huge things go down, or not, or if it's a trajectory that plays out over long periods. But it's a wild ride.
It has certainly been a crazy wild ride in the last few years. I mean, this year has been a crazy one.
Yeah.
Um, so ascension, what do you think? How do you think is it going to be? I mean, like apart from global ascension, personal
Apart from what?
apart from global ascension,
Global ascension. Okay.
what do you think? I mean, share your opinion on personal ascension, and how does that really play out?
Okay, well, personal ascension. John Fuller doesn't talk too much about it, right? Because he's talking about the global ascension, right? The earth going. And then if you have a Merkaba activated, then when you die, you can ascend to the next dimensional levels because you don't lose your memory. Your memory stay intact when you have an activated Merkaba field when you die. But I also think that personal ascension is something that is possible. And, Tibetan monks talk about it and have done it, and achieving the light body, the rainbow body, the third enlightenment, of going into light body. I think that that is definitely something that is coming up in the field more, even though it's also some ancient information that's been laid down as a template by maybe some beings who've come here. I think it's showing up more in the field. And I think that as the polarities increase, people will find themselves on one side of a bifurcation of another or another. And if you're on the side of the bifurcation that is ascending, there may be a acceleration of that, and that maybe more people will start to tap those places of personal ascension where you are achieving light body and all of your cells are vibrating with light, and you have free will choice to be here or not be here in this dimensional realm and could come and go. I think that that's incredibly possible, and it lights me up to move in that direction and to think about it and do practices in that way.
Okay, thank you for that. Um, Out of body experiences, and I'm going to level 3 questions now, so
Okay.
feel free to answer or not answer, say pass, whatever you prefer. So before we step into those questions, what do you think about belief systems, and um, how can people grow up or out of belief systems, and how do they learn to recognize them? Because fundamentally this about ascension is too a belief system. There's certainly a lot of stuff happening out there, but at the same time, 100 years ago we believed that the earth was flat. Some people still do. So
yeah, so I love to talk about belief systems. I think belief patterns are huge, and that we do live in an unlimited universe, right? This is on some nature, some holographic reality, create your own reality game. And so if we are living in an unlimited potential, then what limits us is just our belief patterns. And so that is really exciting to think about and talk about and feel into. And I've spent my life excavating myself from the norms of the culture that handed me a whole set of belief patterns growing up, right? And so by the time I was a teenager, I was questioning all the things, like what is true for me, what does this resonate for me, and why do I do things this way and and or that way, and just finding authenticity instead of following stuff. And then when I catch myself even still doing something and I'm like, why did I do that, and I'll look deeper and find out, oh, I actually don't feel that way or don't believe that. It's a belief pattern that I don't even really consciously believe, but it's still in there. So I think that it takes a lot of introspection to sometimes to break through belief patterns, and consciously being aware, meditating your day so that you're looking consciously at what you're doing throughout the day so that you can assess if it's authentic or if it's coming from a conditioned place.
very interesting. So what do you tell me about recognize the skill of recognizing those patterns, because that is the real trick there?
Yeah, that's the trick, for sure. That just takes, I think, time and focus. And I'm not a journaler. I'm not somebody who actually I don't have time for that. I feel like I'm too busy living in the moment. But I go on hikes and I go on walks every day. And that's where I do my introspection and I reflect and I get a lot of insight and work stuff out when I'm hiking and walking. Um, as a more feminine bodied person, sitting in still in meditation and doing like Zen meditation for hours at a time, trying to still the mind, doesn't get me to the places that more active meditation like walking does, or contemplation or dancing. You know, it's kind of typical. Even Drumbler will talk about the masculine way and the feminine ways into the heart. And so I get a lot from that, and really just reflecting. I don't know that there's a shortcut through that.
You don't think there is?
To being conscious and aware and seeing your patterns. Like, I don't know that there's anything but time and being willing to look.
I may be arrogant to say that I have resolved all my belief systems, but I can definitely argue pro Q&A. That's what helped me the most. Do not, question everything. I don't want to talk about trusting or believing, because I know there's power in that. But I also know that the truth behind true capacity to understand is questioning everything. Never take any assumption, never take anything as an axiom, never, always ask even your mother, especially your mother, never accept anyone's straight information. Why? Because it's always tainted or distorted, if you want to use the law of one, with their own intention or with their own self-interest. Mostly in the society we live in, everyone communicates, a lot of people communicate for their personal self-interest. I mean, right now, this project in itself is a selfish effort. I want to talk to these amazing people that teach the awakening, the illumined heart, and, suck as much of their experience as possible. And, eventually everyone else will get to enjoy it too. So it becomes a win-win. So that's what makes me really excited about this project. But, if I'm selling you my latest book, or actually, if I'm selling you, let me give you an example. I don't know, the latest cell phone, you may not want one. And, I'm just talking with a purpose to, fulfill my desire to sell. Simple, pragmatical example, maybe too mundane, but oftentimes I think the belief systems are hidden in not questioning. Right. People are lazy to not, they just accept what's coming. They drink it down.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are just doing time. They're just here, just getting by. And, that brings up the whole thing about fear, and how when people are in fear, they're so much easier to control. And to step out of fear, you have to do the work. You have to excavate and release the belief patterns, the traumas, the schemas, all the things that can get in the way from you actually responding authentically to the moment. And so a lot of people are carrying a lot of fear and a lot of trauma. And when you're in that, almost living in a fight or flight state, there just isn't energy there to pursue those kinds of Q&As and questions. And so the degree that we do that work, then we can get out of the fear response, and just whenever fear comes up, or programming, or threatening things, and how the culture loves to keep people in fear. And when you're just in your heart, you can say, no, thanks. I'm just not buying into it. I'm just going to stay in my heart. And Drumbler says that often, just like the degree that we are in fear is the degree that we can be controlled. And so when you step out of that and do that work, then you're free.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to jump into a topic that has been fascinating me for decades. And it's the topic of death, and going beyond the veil, the tube of light. Some people believe it's a trap. Some other people think that is the channel that goes straight to source. Others think there's no such thing. What is your opinion? And, again, we are in the realm of belief systems. Since I don't know if you had an out-of-body experience, but
I haven't really had an out-of-body experience.
No.
I've been trying to be embodied. It's been my path for a long time, and I feel like I've arrived there. And so I don't tend to shoot out even seek that. I'm interested in lucid dreaming, but not so much out-of-body experiences. But let's talk about death. And so I also have a huge fascination with the idea of death and like Tibetan Book of the Dead and like the tunnel of light. And is that a trap? And is that a soul harvesting thing? And there's so much interesting, information out there to sort of dive into. And of course, it's all hypothetical and it's all other people's stories. And, what's my own experience? I think at this point, I've come to feel that I'm not going toward anything when I die. Like being sovereign and realizing that everything that I need is directly within. I'm going in. I'm going to go into the tiny space of my heart. I'm going to go inward rather than following a light or following some loved ones here or anything like that. And, it is possible that I still have some ego hangups on trying to be sovereign and do everything on my own. However, I don't know about trusting tunnels or channels or other things like that. I think that because we live in a multidimensional reality, there's possibilities and there's options because so much of this is based on belief patterns. If the universe is unlimited and there's levels and layers of potential in this realm, then a person's belief pattern maybe defines what does happen to them after they die. I have the experience of my mother dying 5 years ago. She was a Christian and really close to Jesus. And after she died, a family member had a dream, and she came to this family member of mine in a dream and said, "It's true, Jesus is real. I'm with him." And it really confused my family member who has taken this workshop and used to be a Christian and had outgrown that. And then she had this dream, and my mom coming to her after she died, telling her, "It's true, Jesus is real." And then they were really confused because, and the way I explained it to them was that I felt like that was actually probably true for my mother, because she believed that so strongly that she was at that vibrational level that when she died, her spirit probably went directly down the tunnel or the channel that led to that recycle mission. And she probably was in that field and experiencing her reality. I had Amachi was my guru for many years in the 90s. And I remember going through a period where I was really confused about Veta and Advaita. Like, is non-dual the reality, or is it bhakti and devotion and a deity, and like, which is it? And I remember her telling me, it's as you want it to be. And that kind of also lines up with that, right? Like, is there one truth in the end that is anything but absolute oneness, and everything else is also just part of this experience that we're all here to learn? So I don't know what it's going to be, but I think I'm going to be looking to my Merkaba and my own higher self, and to navigate those realms afterward.
How did your family members see any dichotomy between Jesus and the Merkaba teachings, or I don't see that dichotomy. I mean, like, why was she confused?
She was confused because she had not that long ago outgrown the whole idea of the Christian dogma, that she was starting to see beyond. And so when my mother came to them and said that it's real, it's true, the path that my mother was on of such dogma, it almost validated that to her, and yet she had already outgrown all that, and so she was just confused about, like, whoa, is it really, you got to give your soul to Jesus, are you going to go to hell? Like, she had to process that.
Oh, I see it. I see. All right. So the belief system that you either belong to Jesus or you belong to hell.
Yeah,
Back to
right.
the Christian polarity. Yeah, I think I have grown that I'm Christian. I'm Italian originally, so I got pumped with 20 since the age of 18. Well, from 0 to 18, with all sorts of nonsense and BS.
I got the same Christian. I'm a Catholic till 18.
And like, and you know what I'm talking about. And so I don't see the dichotomy anymore. He's just one of the giants up there.
Yeah.
He came down to give an example, and then they shoot off back to where they, were coming from, or where everybody is. And I'm sure there's this philosophy. I don't remember where it comes from. I think it's an Indian saying: "The company you keep affects the way you are." And so, you know, whatever level you're at, you join the ones at your level. And I think it's also based on intention. You know, there's a lot of stories of souls that are addicted in life. Their addiction don't disappear after life. They're still attracted by that kind of, you know, gambling or smoking or sexual addictions, whatever it is. You know, those addictions stays in your consciousness, and you still want them after life. And so most likely, I mean, there's souls of that caliber. They're hanging out all together someplace, somewhere. That's a place I wouldn't mind, you know, hanging out. So, and maybe I'm talking about paradise. I'm not sure I'm creating a belief system in my head, but there is certainly space-time beyond this physical realm we are inhabiting right now, beyond the physiological limited time frame of our lifespan.
Yeah.
Whatever consciousness is located within here and in here is going to move out and go somewhere, hanging out with all the others that resonate with the same frequency. You know, if you want to use, if you allow me this very spiritual, let's call it that way, declaration. The question though is, why not here and now? Why do we not see them now? Why can't we chat and hang out with them right here, right now?
Maybe this vibration is just too dense for that.
Mm.
You know, this definitely is a dense vibration. Sometimes I've caught myself saying, this ain't no heaven realm, you know, third dimension of the earth. And so, you know, I guess you can only resonate to what you can vibrate at, you know, just like you said. And so maybe that's coming. Maybe as we continue to raise our vibration, those beings or those energies become more accessible. And just like when I think when people possibly die, like they go to where their energy levels vibrate at. And so it can be the same here.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
you know, we were talking about reading the Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East book, right? And so there's examples of being resonating at really high levels here in this realm. And that's why I think that light body is possible and ascension is possible here in this realm. And yet it's certainly an acquired taste and not for all.
I mean, it is, in my opinion, one of those you don't know what you don't know situations where if you don't sense it somehow. I mean, if your apparatus for perception is not influenced by them or their presence, I mean, it's like never having had strawberry ice cream and not even knowing that it exists. It's like not even in your field, right? So the question is begged, and it's obviously how, you know, how do you get to these guys, and how do you meet them, or how? I guess prayer is probably the answer.
And, you know, all these volunteers, like you were saying, that they've come from elsewhere, the Melchizedeks, you know, the Christed ones, and have come here, and the Buddhas to kind of lay down some knowledge, the Hathors, you know, just beings that have always arrived to teach these teachings. And so I think they've been laying it out for millennia of how we do it and how it is possible. And you know, yet the, you know, duality is full of so much distraction and so much engagement and so much sensation and whatnot that, you know, it really has to be somebody who is driven by that to probably get anywhere on that path, because life is full enough just being in survival mode or in you know, enjoyment mode or whatever can just fill your entire reality.
You know, honestly, I'm a bit like you. I've tried to put aside all, or possibly as much as I could, of survival mode. I mean, like, once you take away money, health, and relationships, then all your time is free. Seriously, like, you have so much to grow. There's so much to learn, so much to read, when you don't have to take care of all those three things. And when you have that kind of time, when you have that kind of luxury, you can only do two things: either be driven by societal experimentation or societal expectation. And with these, I mean, either you go travel and you enjoy what's out, or you drive yourself mad making money thinking that you have to be like the others, or or excuse me, you kind of realize, like you said, the only way out is in.
Mm. I think, and also I think some people are just more growth oriented or driven by that. Yeah. And also there's an interesting thing, the work of Dolores Cannon, and she talks about like the 3 waves of volunteers in the new earth, and that the second waivers are people who, just came here as volunteers. And I identify that with that. And there's something specific that she said that really resonates, is that people who are here just to kind of play a role in this awakening tend not to want to sink into life too much. They're not always having families and big jobs and things like that, things that enmesh you heavily in the world, and then you get caught and you get invested in all the things, and they just kind of walk lightly, just being the vibration. And so I think that has naturally served me to not get too caught up in the things of the world, that it has let me have more time to do the subtler work.
The inner work, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, you guys, I'm going to add Dolores Cannon's books links down here. She's an amazing, fascinating hypnotherapist that for 40 years worked on regressions and then took people to other states of consciousness. And the content that came out of her sessions are summarized by her in something like 14 books and then published by her own company called Mountain Ozark. Really fascinating stuff. You'll see the content down here below. Viola, last couple of questions. I know we are above our time. I can't tell you how I'm enjoying this conversation. You're a fascinating individual. Remote viewing. Go.
I don't see very much. So remote viewing is not something that I've experimented with. More like I have my intuitive sense, my intuition, and I trust it, but I don't always see in that way, or nor have I cultivated that. So I guess we can pass that on that one.
All right, cool. Next question would be Egypt. Oh, sorry. No. One more interesting one. Sun. The sun.
Sun. Oh, I love
I'm a former student of breatharianism.
Yeah, I feel like the sun is one of the very few things in this realm, in this dimension, that is unmesswithable. And I feel like the moon's questionable.
Absolute. There's no.
Yeah, exactly. It's just you cannot touch it. It is pure. It is. When I think of Father Sky, I definitely am. Tapping into the pure energy of the sun, and I try to sun gaze as much as possible and lay out in the sun. And I'm a huge fan. And I think that the sun is a conscious being, just as I feel like the earth is as well. Right. And actually, in one of a past life regression that I did with Dolores Cannon's work of going into some past lives, I had a lifetime as a sun, and that was shocking and fascinating to find out. And so maybe why I also have such a resonance to the sun, and probably a portal. And I don't think it's hot once you get onto the inside. That makes a lot of sense, but I don't know for sure. But big fan.
Yeah, big fan as well. I'm boosting with energy when I'm under the sun. There's just no other way to say it. It's like, oh, fuck. I could have just run 100 kilometers and I can still go. As long as the sun is out, no, nothing else is necessary. So nice one. Spot on the sun. On the sun. It feels like I'm not even going to say that. I was about to say, it feels like I'm on a speed dating thing with you right now. Weird how many same things we have experienced. So last question was about the Sphinx and Egypt. You've been there?
Yeah, I have. I went to Egypt in 2012 to spend the December 21st, 2012 there. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I
Were
had,
you there before?
no, it was my first time. Although since I was a little girl, I've been sort of obsessed with Egypt, and I had posters in my bedroom growing up of Egypt. And any school report I ever had to do, I would do it on Egypt. And so there's always been a draw for me. And I think the closest thing that I maybe resonated with in this world that felt like home or felt familiar. And so in 2012, when I knew that December 21st was coming, Drumbala was going to lead a big meditation on that. And I thought, where do I want to be on the planet for that momentous day? And so I decided that this was the time to do something I'd been kind of saving up for my whole life, was to go to Egypt. And I thought that I would go there, and that would be where I would going to anchor energies on December 21st. I would be anchoring energies in Egypt. And then I got there and went with a very small group of like 12 people that I found, like a spiritual tour, so they could take you to all the places. And then went to temple after temple after temple, and just was almost bombarded and floored with so much energy that I realized, oh, silly me. I thought I was going to go to Egypt and anchor energies there. Egypt wanted to anchor energies in me, the other way around. Like, what can I add to that energy? Wow. So I had a profound experience there, really, some really profound stuff. And it is still, I still think about it. It haunts me. It was profound connection. And I don't know that I'll go back or need to, but it certainly was a lifelong thing that I had always wanted to do. And I got to be at the Sphinx and did a meditation standing in front of the paws of the Sphinx, and realizing that probably right beneath me, was Akashic records and just like the halls of Amenti and just all this energy. And I could really feel, the energy. It was just so potent. I took my shoes off everywhere I could and just really connected with the land. And it was it was like the funnest field trip adventure, surely, that I'd been on.
Wow. So was that in the pyramid, or just temples around that were so charged and so potent, or
All
where?
of them. Yeah, all of them. I got to be inside the Great Pyramid on the full moon one night after hours. We had rented it where you can pay some money. And so a little group of 12 got to be alone together for like 2 hours in the Great Pyramid and just run around and do whatever we wanted to, and toning and laying in the sarcophagus and going down to the subterranean chamber, and even finding like the little tunnels where Drumbala talks about in the Flower of Life books, where he was trying to activate his Merkaba. I mean, it was just so amazing. And I remember when I left and came out, I felt like I came out on an alternate overtone of this dimension.
Hmm.
Like, wow, I don't know that I'll ever be the same. And I felt like it was lots of activations for sure.
Wow, fascinating. Did you go with Drumvalo on that trip, or were you on someone else?
I found a very small group like that led a little spiritual tour. And so I was on my own with a small group of 12. Yeah.
Wow, super cool. All right, why don't you tell us a little bit about your website, your email, and all the other services that you offer?
Okay, sure. So my heartandsound.com is my website. Heart and Sound, heartandsoundhealing.com. And so the heart is the heart workshop part, is the awakening the illuminated heart. And I'm offering those workshops in person about every 2 months in Portland. Still throughout this, I am offering them in person because I feel like this is the most important work, especially for this time. And so I have not stopped offering those just to very small groups, and also have been doing them online as well. And I started doing that as soon as things locked down in March, and have maybe taught 6 or 7 of them online, and it actually is really wonderful. So every 6 weeks I'm doing one online, and then also about every 2 weeks in person. So if you're around in this neck of the woods, you can come to an in-person workshop. And the online ones have been amazing because people are in the comfort of their own homes and can go really deep into the meditations. And it's been really fun because I've got to be in workshop with people from all around the world because it's more accessible. So doing that, I also do regularly, I do ATIH refreshers for like 3 hours, where anyone who's done the workshop can come and do like a little 3-hour reboot and go through all the steps again. I love to do that. for people. And
I'll
then,
definitely step into one of those.
yeah, I just had one last Saturday, but I'm going to schedule another one for next month. So I'll invite you to the next one. And, go through the beams, go through check all the things, do the meditations. It's really fun. And then the other piece of what I do is I'm a sound healer. So I've been interested in healing since I was about 25. So a little over 25 years now. I've been focusing on healing work, and also have been a musician since I was in my early 20s as well, as a vocalist and playing lots of different instruments. And eventually they both combined together, and I found myself as a sound healer. And so I have lots of sound instruments, and I do sound healing events. I don't do them online because I feel like the sound is about the vibration and being in the room with them. It's the same reason people still go to the symphony as opposed to listening to a record, right? So I have a practice here in Portland, Oregon, where I do sound healing events for groups, and I do private sound healing work and healing sessions with people.
Nice.
So,
any specific instruments?
I really focus on the gong. And if I sort of turn my camera here, you can see that I've got a whole sound studio right there. And so I love the gong. I find it to be the most potent healing tool of them all, the way that it just can repattern and clear the energy field and take people into theta brainwave states. And so I think the gong and my voice, I would consider my main two healing tools.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Email, please.
Yeah, Viola Rose 7 at gmail.com is my email address. And the website, right, is heartandsoundhealing.com.
Awesome. All right, you guys, this is Viola Rose, right? So you can hear, extremely well articulated, an amazing teacher, dedicated basically most of her life to spiritual work. Definitely vouch for her. Check her out. Thanks for coming. Smash the like button, join our subscribers, and I'll see you in the next interview. Take care, you guys. Thank you, Viola. All right, bye-bye.
Love.